Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, students, teachers, inductees, and families. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2008 TUCS TMSS Wall of Fame ceremony. Please rise and join Ms. Will and the TMSS Lions Honors Band in the singing of O Canada. Fortunate to have such an excellent school band. The band represents one of the many facets of learning that we will be celebrating next week under the provincial theme, Reading More into Education. Now, to share some opening remarks, please welcome TMSS Principal, Mr. Norm Casavan.
Good evening. Welcome to the TMSS Wall of Fame presentation. I would like to extend a very special welcome to our guests of honor, their family and friends, and all community members who have taken time out of their busy schedules to attend this special evening with us. We hope that everyone here tonight, especially our present students, will be inspired by the individuals and their accomplishments. Each individual being recognized exemplifies hard work, passion, and drive, all of the characteristics we hope to instill in our students. Each individual has within them the ability to become whatever they want, hope, or dream to become. Learning is the common thread that binds each of us and the individuals being celebrated tonight. Both individuals being recognized had to not only learn their skill or craft and excel, but also had to learn to overcome any obstacles they encountered along the way. We all have varying abilities and interests. We are passionate about different things, but we all can learn, and if we can combine learning, passion, motivation, and drive, we can accomplish great things, just as the two individuals here this evening have done. The individuals being celebrated here tonight are extraordinary. Their accomplishments are different, but we are equally proud of them. They serve as role models, mentors, and a reminder that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce or reintroduce Ms. Manson, who will take us through the remainder of our program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casavan, for your remarks. It's our hope that the Wall of Fame will serve two important purposes. The first is to recognize former students of TUCS and TMSS who have realized extraordinary achievements in athletics, academics, the arts, leadership, citizenship, volunteerism, and community service. The second goal of the Wall of Fame is to serve as an inspiration to current students. In order to be considered for this award, alumni must have achieved a readily recognizable and outstanding level of excellence and must have been nominated by someone outside of the committee. Tonight we will induct two members in alphabetical order. Many of you will have noticed during your tour of the school this evening that permanent plaques paying tribute to our 2008 inductees have already been placed on the Wall of Fame alongside the inductees from 2007, which was our inaugural year. If you have not yet visited our Wall of Fame, please make sure you do so. It can be found inside the main entrance of TMSS on the north wall, right across from the front office. One of the mandates of the Wall of Fame Committee is to celebrate alumni accomplishments which have taken place over a variety of periods in time, in order to provide a frame of reference, particularly for those in our audience who were not yet born at that time, and also for those of us who were around at that time but find our memory banks somewhat challenged. I'll preface each of our 2 inductions with a walk down memory lane, a brief tour of significant political, social, and cultural landmarks of the time. Our first inductee left TUCS in 1985 at 15 years of age to pursue his dreams in a more hospitable climate. Appropriately, this was the year proclaimed by the United Nations to be the International Year of Youth. In 1985 was a year of both tragedy and hope. Most of the tragedy perpetuated by adults, and most of the hope the result of youthful endeavors. Our walk through the past finds Brian Mulroney as Prime Minister of Canada, and Ronald Reagan serving his 2nd term as President of the United States. This was the year Sikh terrorists were blamed when Flight 182 blew up en route from Toronto to London, the year the wreck of the Titanic was found off the coast of Newfoundland, and also the year the Turkish embassy in Ottawa was stormed by Armenian terrorists who killed a security guard and held a dozen people hostage for several hours. However, it was also the year that a supergroup of Canadian musicians joined forces to record the charity single Tears Are Not Enough, while their counterparts in the United States recorded We Are the World, raising millions of dollars for the Ethiopian Relief Fund. Also in music that year, Madonna insisted she was a material girl, Phil Collins wanted One More Night, Bruce Springsteen was Dancing in the Dark, and Tears for Fears accurately proclaimed in song that everybody wants to rule the world. It was in the mid-'80s that Rick Hansen launched his Man in Motion World Tour by Wheelchair in order to raise money for spinal cord research. Top grossing films in 1985 were Back to the Future, Rambo 2, and Rocky IV, although Out of Africa won Best Picture and Director at the Academy Awards that year. Television fans saw The Dukes of Hazzard canceled after many a fine car crash, and the first episode of Saturday night's main event aired on NBC. The season finale of Dallas found Bobby Ewing on his deathbed after being run down by his crazed ex-sister-in-law, and by that time, of course, someone had already shot JR, eliciting the huge Who Shot JR t-shirt craze. Back in '85, The Facts of Life and The Price is Right continued their popularity. Elmo was a new character introduced to Sesame Street that year, and NBC became the first broadcast network to air in stereo. In 1985, Care Bears were all the rage for children, and sports, same as any year really, was all the rage for adults. This was the year Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's all-time hitting record. Patrick Ewing was drafted to the NBA, and Michael Spinks beat Larry Holmes by a decision in 15 rounds to become the first world light heavyweight champion to win a world heavyweight title. Meanwhile, in Canada, the BC Lions won the Grey Cup over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Finally, it was in 1985 that Caitlin Porter of Canadian Idol fame was born, and also the year that Foster Hewitt, a popular Canadian broadcaster, was laid to rest. It was a year of both memorable beginnings and memorable endings. However, tonight we remember 1985, most notably, as being the beginning of a stellar athletic career embarked upon by one of our own. Our first inductee tonight is James Edward Clooney, born January 15, 1969, to Gordon and Eileen Clooney, former residents of Tisdale who now live in Saskatoon. Usually the frozen surfaces of ponds on cold winter days comes to mind when sports fans think of this province's breeding ground for accomplished athletes. We don't necessarily think of thawed lakes on summer days. But as a youngster, Jim got hooked on water skiing when he realized there wasn't much room in the National Hockey League for a 5'4" left winger. Although Jim Clooney grew up on the prairies, he soared to new heights on the water. From Saskatchewan to sites around the world, he leaped to international acclaim in the sport of water skiing. As a jump specialist, Clooney was a member of the national team and competed at many prestigious international tournaments. Jim, who allows that water skiing is not a mainstream sport on the prairies because of our 6-week summers, began the sport at the age of 10 at Kippabiska Lake, not far from here. 5 years later, his family joined others in founding the Kippabiska Water Sports Club, which soon became the largest water ski club in the province. By 1981, Clooney was the highest rated water ski jumper in Saskatchewan. He would maintain that position until his retirement in 1999. He was also recognized as the Male Athlete of the Year in water skiing in Saskatchewan from 1985 to 1999, was a member of the Saskfirst water ski team from 1987 to 1996. Records he held in jump and trick skiing events for both boys and men further cemented his status on the Saskatchewan water skiing scene. Outside the province, Clooney also enjoyed success. Competing in 12 Western Canadian Championships, he won 7 gold medals, 6 silver medals, and 5 bronze. Adding to his virtual haul of medals, he won 8 gold, 3 silver, and 3 bronze medals while competing in 15 different national championships. In grade 10, Jim moved from the flatlands of Saskatchewan to Okahumpka, Florida. That was hard to say. To attend the internationally renowned Jack Travers Ski School. Here he took advantage of the opportunity to train all year round and further his water skiing career. In 1992, Clooney became one of the few jumpers to break the 200-foot barrier at the 1992 Moomba Masters in Australia. He retired with a career best jump of more than 213 feet, which would be more than twice the length of this auditorium. Yeah, you'd need a pilot's license. In addition to these accomplishments, Clooney's contributions extended beyond the water. In 1997, he was named an athlete representative with the Canadian Olympic Association for Water Ski and Wakeboard Canada and served as an athlete liaison on Water Ski and Wakeboard Canada's board of directors from 95 to 96, as well as various other committees. Clooney was also a founding member of Professional Jumpers International Association. During the winters, he coached Saskatchewan water skiers at a training academy he operated in Florida and returned home every year to coach young skiers and to promote the sport at an annual water skiing clinic. Upon retiring as a competitor, Clooney continued to stay involved in the sport. He was vice president of competition for the Saskatchewan Water Ski Association in 1999 to 2000, as well as chief of competition and organizer of the 2000 Saskatchewan Provincial Water Skiing Championships. During the summer of 2000, he organized and oversaw a provincial coaching program. Remaining active with his home club at Kippabiska Lake, Clooney was also a top tournament judge and boat driver. Beyond his titles as an athlete and a committee member, Jim Clooney has bestowed a level of respect, determination, and integrity on the sport. He coaches teammates and his coaches, teammates, and international athletes have all referred to him as the little man with a big heart. A man who believes that values fair play, family, and nationalism are of the utmost importance. He never overlooked the volunteers who work behind the scenes, always acknowledging them and expressing gratitude for their contributions. Jim is the most enthusiastic team player we have had in my 27 years on the team, said national team head coach Steve Bush. And on top of that, he proved time and time again that he was one of the top jumpers in the whole world. In 1986, Clooney was recognized by the town of Tisdale for his accomplishments as a water skier. The Kippabiska Water Sports Club held a Jim Clooney Appreciation Day in 1995 and erected a sign featuring Clooney jumping at the entrance to Kippabiska Regional Park. Most recently, in 2008, Clooney became the third water skier to have his sporting feats preserved in the Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame. Jim has said that the highlight of his career was the World Team title in 1991, since no one had ever beaten the United States before that. He describes the experience with the national team as being both fun and unique. He says, "We all grew up together and we had a lot of pride. I try to stay involved as much as I can. The sport for me is a passion." Jim describes his life these days as so much different than it was in the 90s, adding that he now has a real job and is no longer single. This ex-professional jumper has a wife, Michelle, who is an anesthetist, I can never pronounce it, anesthesiologist, I think, and 3 boys, Seamus, Nigel, and Samson. Jim is joint owner of a trucking company, a pipeline construction business, and 2 other businesses, all operated under the auspices of Kelsey Trail. No doubt his vast experience in jumping will be of great value to him, both in business and in the challenge of raising kids, as clearly fearlessness and tenacity are required in both. Jim Clooney remains one of the most respected skiers in Canada. His passion for life and for the sport make him an exemplary person and an athlete who leads by example. It is our hope that today has been a day for Jim and his family to revisit his outstanding accomplishments and for them to be reminded of how very proud we are to consider Jim to be a native son. Please join me in welcoming Jim Clooney to the TMSS Wall of Fame.
Well, firstly, thank you very much, Lorna, and the committee for this honor and that wonderful presentation. And I was thinking about preparing a few remarks for tonight and got started to do it a couple times. And then I got into the same problem that you sort of always get into when you have a lot of things to be thankful for, which is who do you thank and who did you leave out accidentally? But I did make up my mind, just because of the nature of the event, kind of on the way out here, that what I really wanted to talk about and be sort of my point, I guess, being this recognition is sort of a bit about my earlier days, because I did leave the town of Tisdale when I was younger, but I wanted to just give some comments about the way that my upbringing and living in Tisdale really impacted not just my sporting life, but my whole life, because they're really intertwined. And what I wanted to do is just take a couple names out of the hat, because there is many names, but when I was young, in Tisdale and growing up, there was a handful of people that really seemed to always be at every sporting event, involved with every minor sport, involved with that you just always seem to see, and those people really helped shape, I think, not just my life, but I played some recreational hockey in Saskatoon still with some of the same guys that I played minor hockey with in Tisdale, and it really helped shape, I think, when you see it in that context, it really sort of starts you down a path that you don't get off, and I think it's really healthy. But there were just a couple names I would like to thank from my youth. growing up for being such a part of minor sports in Tisdale was Bob Price, Bob Burgess, Bill Zorn, and John Wink, both, and notably their teachers of mine. But it was always, you know, those guys, I just couldn't get them out of my mind driving up here today on how much of an impact they had, because so much of it was volunteer time, and there's so little thanks for any of that ever. And I know I certainly didn't thank them when I was a kid, and would like to do so now. I guess one other thing that kind of caught me in the presentation was the town or the school recognizes me tonight. I'd like to make it almost the opposite, and I'd like to recognize the town and the school and the minor sports programs and this facility that we're sitting in. You know, that's what I'd like to recognize right back, is not just being a part of this great sporting career I've had, but the whole town has grown from it. And I feel, I mean, I don't get around here as much as I used to, but I do get around a lot all over Western Canada and stuff like that. And I've never been anywhere like Tisdale, and don't expect that I ever will, because I've been a lot of places. And I guess just before I leave, just growing up, there was you know, a number of us sort of hanging out together as we were kids, the same age as me. But I did have some real good luck when I was probably 10 or 12 years old from a couple guys that are quite a bit older than me at the time, which is Bill and Mike Messer. When I was just learning to water ski, and they were, you know, the cool teenagers, they decided to let me hang around with them for a few weeks, and I've said to them both, actually, thanked them a lot for that. And that's a message for a few of the kids that are here. You know, a lot of those younger kids, you might think, you know, they're kind of painful to deal with if they're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years younger, but you know, when you do mentor kids through sports and bring them along and include them in things, you know, not that they're going to be, you know, successful or famous athletes or anything like that, but I really do think it has a real positive impact on kids for many, many years, and would like to pass that along. Just in closing, just real proud to be from Tisdale, and real proud of the friends I've got here and maintained for quite a few years, and lifelong friends, and it does bring a lot of pride to me personally for getting this honor, and it's just great to be back, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody again, or meeting people for the first time. But thank you very much.
Second alumni to be inducted as a 2008-2009 member of the TUCS Wall of Fame graduated from TUCS in 1972. Although he too found notoriety through athletics, he will be inducted as a builder, one of those people who used his talents to contribute to the fabric of Canadian life. While a well-known Chinese proverb suggests it is best to live in interesting times, the 70s were more than interesting times. In fact, as Charles Dickens suggested of his own lifetime, they were the best of times and they were the worst of times. In 1972, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was touted as the most charismatic Prime Minister ever to govern Canada. He was, incidentally, a man who had 3 children born on the same day of different years. What are the odds that anybody, never mind your leader of state, could do that? Anyway, the capital gains tax came into effect that year, making him popular with some and extremely unpopular with others. In the meantime, infamous Richard Milhous Nixon, who was President of the United States at the time, had finally announced, after 8 years of strife in Vietnam, that no new draftees would be sent. However, this was the year that Nixon's involvement in the Watergate scandal was discovered, eventually leading to his impeachment. Yep, you got it. We all know it's almost impossible to get impeached these days, so maybe they were the good old days. In 1972, the war in Ireland escalated on Bloody Friday as 22 bombs planted by the IRA exploded, killed 9, and seriously wounded 130 people. Maybe not so many by today's standards, but keep in mind they'd already been fighting for 800 years. Meanwhile, at the Munich Summer Games, an Arab black terrorist group known as Black September invaded Olympic Village, massacring 11 Israeli athletes, 5 guerrillas and 1 policeman. However, before we leave the war-torn aspect of 1972, bet you were all hoping for a real depressing history lesson after a full day of work today. Let me mention one rather unusual incident. 1972 was the year that a Japanese soldier was found wandering aimlessly in the jungles of Guam, completely unaware that the Second World War had ended 28 years previously. Now that's noteworthy. Certainly it was noteworthy to him anyway. And now on to more pleasant aspects of 1972. Canadian comedian George Carlin, who died just this last summer, was arrested in Milwaukee for reciting his 7 words you can never say on television, some of which I actually remember. Well, okay, maybe I remember all of them. Maybe that isn't pleasant, but at least nobody dies in that story. Also in 1972, Atari kicked off the first generation of popular video games with the release of Pong, and the first episode of The Price is Right was hosted by Bob Barker on CBS. For entertainment, we watched The Godfather 1, starring Marlon Brando, which won both Best Picture and Best Actor, The Poseidon Adventure, starring Shelley Winters, and Cabaret, all top-grossing films. No matter what else went wrong during the early 70s, everyone knows that the music was absolutely right. Pink Floyd debuted their famous Dark Side of the Moon album. Aerosmith signed to Columbia Records. Neil Young proved he had a heart of gold. But Don McLean's American Pie album led the charts in 1972. By 1972, everyone had a television. Well, at least a black and white television. So MASH, the Beachcombers, the Partridge Family, and the Waltons were popular, while Bewitched and My 3 Sons ended that year. 1972 was an excellent year in sports. Undoubtedly, the most memorable moment was when Paul Henderson scored the goal of the century to give Canada the win in the 1972 Summit Series, the first ever Canada versus the Soviet Union hockey showdown. It was also in 1972 that the WHA was formed to compete with the NHL and signed several NHL stars, such as Bobby Hull and Derek Sanderson, to their ranks. Most importantly, at least to Rough Rider fans, in 1972, Saskatchewan Rough Riders made it to the Grey Cup. The 10-13 loss to Hamilton was disappointing, but the opportunity was exhilarating. Finally, 1972 was the year Shaquille O'Neal, Brad Paisley, Eminem, and Sean Green were born. It was also the year J. Edgar Hoover and Dan Blocker, who played Hoss on Bonanza, and Harry S. Truman all passed away. The people and the events that surround us often impact who we become. While the 70s was fraught with unrest, it is also remembered as a time of idealism and hope. It's possible that no decade can lay claim to as many famous sayings as the 70s, some of them not particularly insightful, like bummer and sock it to me. But the 70s also gave birth to some inspirational philosophy. Margaret Mead, a famous anthropologist of the time, said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing it ever has." Which brings us to the second of our 2008 inductees to the TUCS TMSS Wall of Fame, a builder in the field of athletics, Keith Brian Henderson. Born March 11, 1954 in Tisdale, Keith is the son of Eileen and the late George Henderson of Crooked River. Keith Henderson was an official on the field for 5 seasons with the Canadian Football League. Except for Montreal and Ottawa, he has officiated in every CFL stadium, even the old CNE and the new Skydome in Toronto, and has retained his involvement with the CFL as a timekeeper in Edmonton, Alberta. Keith has also officiated at numerous Western University playoff games and won Canadian Junior Championship, known as the Canadian Bowl. In 2006, Keith officiated the game in Edmonton leading up to the Intergold Cup, the Canadian Junior Championship. He was also training chairman for the Edmonton Football Officials Association, a position he held for 6 years. Currently, he officiates University and Prairie Junior Football League games, which have kept his love for football alive and growing. In March 2004, Mr. Henderson won the Harold Ferguson Football Officials Award, presented for promoting, enhancing, and furthering excellence in football. This TUCS graduate feels blessed to have personally met such legends as Jackie Parker, Ron Lancaster, and Cal Murphy, just to name a few. He says that to be present on a CFL field anywhere in Canada, surrounded by CFL heroes and Hall of Famers, is the thrill of a lifetime. When asked what has been his most memorable moment with the CFL, Henderson stated, being on the same field with Henry Gizmo Williams, the greatest kick returner in the CFL. That is my highlight. Although clearly the opportunity to officiate at the Grey Cup is impressive, Keith's other accomplishments are many and varied and reach well beyond the confines of the football arena. He continues to participate in and to initiate many types of athletic endeavors and to encourage and foster a love for activity in his community and within the members of his family. These are key to his successes as an athletic builder. Keith began his football career as right guard and center for TUCS High School, for the TUCS High School team. After graduation in 1972, he moved to Alberta, where he helped to initiate the first high school football team in Fort Saskatchewan. He's been very active in Football Saskatchewan and also in Edmonton, organizing amateur football refereeing. Keith coached football for 7 years and softball for 4. He was the recipient of the J. Percy Page Award for Recreational Leadership in Alberta Communities. An avid cross-country and downhill skier, Keith volunteers as a ski patroller at Rabbit Hill in Edmonton. In 1999, he successfully completed the Birkenbeiner cross-country marathon. In 2000, he was a member of the organizing committee for the Trans-Canada Trail Relay, setting the pace for the runners on his bicycle, receiving a medal for special recognition for his work. Keith was also a 4-year member of the River Valley Alliance Committee, developing a trail system and recreation valley from Fort Saskatchewan to Devon, Alberta, a length of 88 kilometers. In addition to this, he spent 5 years organizing the 5K run and generously donated his time and enthusiasm for 13 years as a Boy Scout leader in Fort Saskatchewan. A family-oriented man, Keith, his wife Teresa, and their children, Daryl, Dwayne, and Lisa, do everything together. He and Teresa participated in the opening ceremonies of the 2001 World Athletic Games in Edmonton. Along with his family, Keith has skied in Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec, skied in the Rideau Canal in Ottawa, been to the top of the World Trade Center, and visited the Statue of Liberty. He has explored the French quarters of New Orleans and traveled to Mount Rushmore, Disneyland, Montreal, and Alcatraz in San Francisco. Keith has fished for lobster off Cape Breton Island, dipped his feet in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, and journeyed to Hawaii, the Fiji Islands, and Egypt. Shades of Forrest Gump. All of this has been done in his spare time, since Keith works full-time for Bunge Canada, where he was supervisor for 7 years and has been a grain buyer for the past 20. Also, for the past 5 years, he has worked part-time as a Class 5 driver instructor. And tonight, the committee has received a letter from Brian Small, referee-in-chief, on behalf of Canadian Inter-University Sport, the CFL, and the Canadian Junior Football League, and I would like very much to read this short letter to you. Dear Keith, congratulations on your selection to the Tisdale Middle and Secondary School Wall of Fame. The commitment and love of the game of football that you have exhibited over the past 30-plus years leaves an indelible mark with not only the Edmonton Football Officials Association, but with all the officials that you have influenced across Canada. Your continued mentorship and participation in the game of football places you at the top. As your friend and colleague, I would personally like to thank you for your contribution to football officiating in Canada at every level. To you, Teresa, and your family, a hearty congratulations to a great friend and a fine official. Enjoy your special day. Brian Small, Referee-in-Chief. From walking the halls of TUCS to the successful achievement of his many endeavors as an accomplished football official, community activist, and builder of athletic lifestyles, Keith has never looked back, mainly because he's never had time to. It's our wish tonight to salute the outstanding example Keith sets for his family, his community, and his alma mater. Please join me in welcoming Keith Henderson to our 2008 Wall of Fame.
Pretty hard to sit in a chair and listen to people talk about you in those kind of words. It's very special. I'd just like to, first of all, thank the committee for Tisdale Middle School and Secondary School Wall of Fame for selecting me. This is truly a great honor. And I'm just going to have to take a minute here so that I can see what I'm going to say. First, I'd like to thank especially my family that are here tonight, and also the old friends from Crooked River for showing up here today. I'm just so happy that you're here to share in my special moment. I want to say a big thank you to my sister Cheryl for nominating me. She has been a positive influence and a huge supporter in everything that I've done in my life. I'd like to thank my mom and dad for a good grounding. They taught me to be honest and work hard and to give back to the community. The biggest thank you goes to my wife Teresa. She has encouraged me to stay involved with football and my community, even though these activities took me away from our family at times. I do believe that it takes a community to raise a child, and I know that I have benefited from many others, so I'd like to recognize some of them. Gary Stoker was a big sports influence for me. He coached me in baseball and taught me to be patient when dealing with less skilled people. I curled with him for years, and we had a fair amount of success, even though our team was comprised of a young kid and an old man who couldn't even bend over to throw his rock. Gary always got the best out of everything he was given. My grade 4 teacher, Mrs. Cummings, instilled confidence in me. One time, after public speaking, she told everyone that one day I would be successful, possibly an astronaut. Although I never actually became an astronaut, my feet were definitely off the ground when I refereed on almost every CFL field in Canada. Let me tell you, no matter what stadium in Canada that the Riders play in, they always have the biggest and the most visible support of any team. When I moved to Alberta, or one more person I'd like to mention is my football coach, Bill Zorn. He taught me the basics of football, and he encouraged me to play one more year of football for the Texans, as if I needed more encouragement to be on a football field. When I moved to Alberta, there was no football team in Fort Saskatchewan, so I volunteered to coach when they started a team. We were desperate for officials for our first exhibition games, so I put a flag in my pocket and stepped on the field. The rest is history. I realized that officiating is as close to playing as you can get without getting bruised. So I got involved with the Edmonton Football Officials Association. Along the way, I met some great and totally dedicated people who mentored me. Wayne Fleming, who was the first Western official to officiate in a Vanier Cup, which is the Canadian University Championship game, and Harold Ferguson, who was a CFL official for years, were the main two. I was deeply honored to receive a trophy bearing Harold's name for being the Alberta Football Official of the Year in 2004. One of my biggest CFL thrills was when Bob Poley was playing center for the Riders. We stood on Taylor Field and reminisced about playing together on his dad's farm in Prairie River and playing against one another in 9-9 football when Tisdale played Hudson Bay. Bob was the only player to give me an injury when I was playing, when he stepped on my hand with his cleats. I would just like to leave one thought with you, and that is there is a natural high that comes with working hard and following your passions as far as you can take them. In closing, there's some things you just never forget. Purple and gold, we're the gang that's got the go. We got the go, we got the get, we're the gang that's got the pep. The go, the gang to get the pep, Tisdale High School, yes you bet.
Hooray!
What, does my heart good to hear that again too? I didn't realize I missed it. And now, the Drama 20 class, under the direction of Ms. Fenton Irving, will give its rendition of a class reunion of 70s and 80s TMSS graduates.
Time ago, I can
back here brings back so many good memories.
Oh my gosh, American Pie!
No way, I love this song!
Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry. Oh my gosh, is that you, Taylor?
Oh my gosh, is that you, Shaden? No way! What? You wore your tux stuff too?
Yeah. Believe it? Self-hits.
Yeah, I know. I guess it's just because they're so 70s.
Love your outfit.
Thank you. It's been years since I last saw you.
I know.
Me? I've just been so busy since you graduated. How about you?
Doing what I please, I guess.
Being here, seeing all of my old friends, brings back a lot of good memories about high school.
Yeah. Remember one time in social class when we learned the Irish War in 1972?
Yeah, those were some good old days. Some people debated about it. Some people talked Irish. Oh, it was hilarious.
Some people just got into it, others just didn't care.
Yep. Oh, do you remember the day that the best show on TV ever came out? Do you remember what it was called?
Oh my god, Price Right?
Yep. And also MASH. That was the funniest show, and I loved it.
Good show.
Yep.
Look, where's that girl? What's her name again?
Kelsey, I think.
Right. What the heck is she wearing?
I don't know, but she needs some serious fashion help.
Hey, Taylor. Shayna.
Kelsey.
Kelsey! How have you guys been? Good.
Pretty good, you.
Not too bad. Did you guys watch last night's episode of Grey's Anatomy?
No. We don't watch those shows. They are so bogus.
You watch the movie shows like The Partridge Family? Beachcombers? And the Three Sons.
My Three Sons. Star.
Yep, those were the good old days.
Pretty groovy. You guys know it's not the IZ70s I heard, right?
No. Because for us, it's the 1970s. Every day.
Every day, all day. Wow, you guys can tell. Oh, remember you had back at the Tuts?
Yeah, I sure do, but only one comes to mind that really matters. Keith Henderson.
He was the best looking guy of all the football teams.
I know, he was so far up. I wish he was my husband.
Me too, if I could see his face one last time.
You know he's married, right?
What? Since when?
Well, you guys need to get out more.
Whatever.
What's up, my brethren? What are you doing at this Tufts alumni dance? I thought you and your mom moved to Florida.
John Estine? How are you, Mr. Master of Technology?
I'm doing fantastic, Mr. Master of Technology. Got it rough. Are you still with that extraordinary program with Apple?
Why, yes, I am. What are you doing these days?
I'm actually the creator of different programs for Microsoft. I just had lunch with Mr. Bill Gates yesterday.
Microsoft.
How many years have it been since our high school days?
Too many. You know what, though? I still remember it like it was yesterday. Remember when...
Yes, those were fantastic years of enjoyment,
Except when we had to put up with that superstar Jim Clooney. Every day he would give us
wedgies.
swirlies.
And most importantly, stuffings in the lockers.
He always said that we should be thanking him for all the stuffing because he was going to be a big star someday.
But what he doesn't know is with Apple and Microsoft combining, we'll be the most powerful people in the world. And we'll be even bigger than superstar Jim Clooney.
Thanks to Drama 20 class for that amusing depiction of Jim and Keith's excellent class reunion. This brings to a close our 2008 TMSS Wall of Fame ceremony. We We thank you for this important evening with us. Encourage you to consider nominating a special individual who has made an outstanding contribution. The committee wishes to advise you that from this point forward, Wall of Fame ceremonies will take place every second year only. However, since it's our intention to appoint 4 new inductees each ceremony, nomination forms will soon be available on the TMSS website or at the TMSS front office, and nominations can be made throughout the next 2 years. Please stack your chairs in groups of 10. Good night, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Wall of Fame celebration. Thank you for coming.